back to the show. We're back on the show.
Okay.
What was that video we just watched? That DJO thing. Anyway, I know you didn't see it, Sandra, but you can watch it in the you know, when it's back together. We're here with Sean Dalton now, and Johnny Smash.
Again.
Still here with us because he wants to participate in this conversation.
Thank you kindly, Johnny Smash.
You're welcome. I seen you the last time. I love what you have to say, and I'm here all ears.
Okay.
God bless you. Thank you kindly for the support.
So it's what the death of Canadian bilingualism part 2 today, right?
It is.
Sean,
yeah.
okay, let's begin.
Okay. I spent 4 hours data mining the Census 2011 data, which, by the way, the newspapers did a horrible job of explaining exactly who speaks what language and how this impacts our society, our sense of social cohesiveness and unity across the country.
Yeah.
And I'd like to begin by saying that as of May 10th, 2011, there were 33,476,688 citizens living in Canada in total, and Ontario, Quebec, BC, and Alberta represent 84.29% of Canada's total population.
Ontario, Quebec, BC, and Alberta.
Yeah, 8 out of 10 Canucks live in those 4 provinces.
They're big provinces.
Yeah.
Which are the 4 provinces? Ontario, Quebec?
BC, and Alberta.
Okay.
With Alberta being one of the fastest growing provinces demographically.
Because of the oil.
Yeah, people are going there in droves. People are leaving Ontario and going to Alberta in droves because, as we said in previous debates, Ontario has 5.9 million workers, or 31% of the workforce, but 44% of all the unemployed people in Canada live in Ontario.
But that's changing.
620,000 out of the 1.4 million are in Ontario, the unemployed numbers.
But now they're moving to Alberta.
That's because our government has failed to protect our industrial base.
You're right about that. They don't promote it, they don't protect it, and the Americans, sometimes it either moves to the States or we become branch plants.
Well, I mean, they've gutted the U.S. industrial sector too, right?
But the States is still more productive than we are. We're last in productivity in the G8 nations.
Well, there's reasons for that.
We're least likely to invent stuff or do stuff that, together as a nation.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, so the amount of people that speak English most often, and this is from the third set of data. This is language most often spoken in your house, because that's the language you most often speak in the public. So it's a language spoken in your home. There was 3 sets of data, so I chose the third set because the language you speak inside your house is usually the one you speak in the public realm.
Okay.
So 21.5 million people spoke English in the home, or 64% of the Canadian population. French was spoken by 6.8 million citizens, almost 7 million, or 20%. The French spoken inside Quebec was 6.2 million, or 91%. Outside Quebec, the amount of French-speaking people was just over 500,000, or 8.5%, which proves that outside Quebec, less than 10% of the population speaks French as a first language. However,
still an important language.
The non-official languages, there was 3.6 million people that spoke, or 10% that spoke a non-official language. Bilingual citizens, there was 127,605 in the whole country.
That's it?
0.3 to 1%. When you average everything
tragic.
out. But the bilingual citizens, English and a foreign language, was 724,000, or 2.2% of the whole Canadian population.
Well, that's because of immigration.
It was several times higher,
Yeah.
So, Ontario represents 38.4% of Canada's total population. 10 million speak English. 284,000 speak French, or 2.2% of Ontario. That's one of the highest French-speaking provinces in the country at 2.21%. If you look at Quebec, it's 91%. I'm sorry, 79% of people speak French as a first language. But if you look at BC, 0.42 of 1% speak French as a first language. 16,000 citizens. Let's look at Alberta. French, 24,000 citizens speak French, or 0.68 of 1%. If you look at Manitoba, we've had 50 years to try this policy. Like, bilingualism is in 70s, so we've had 4 or 5 decades to actually experiment with this to see if it's actually working or it's not working.
It obviously needs to try harder.
Okay, but wait a second. I don't know if you have the stats on this, but don't go home. Do more homework if you don't. Okay, in Quebec. Okay. What is the percentage of people where they speak French at home, that's the first language, with Quebec City versus Montreal?
Okay, Quebec City is more French-speaking. Montreal's seen a decline in French-speaking citizens from 62.5% to 56.5% in the last 10 years.
Well, it's a big immigration center, too.
Quebec has a policy of interculturalism, so if you go to Quebec, They try to assimilate citizens. They try to make you one of them, like kind of like the United States, like where you are forced to struggle in the melting pot ethos.
Okay. Yeah.
So
and then Montreal?
Alberta is very similar to Quebec City. Like if you go to Alberta, you have to be a cowboy. You have to fit in. They encourage it too. They invite you to all the rodeos, and they make people feel at home.
So my point here is, if you drill down even more, okay, it's really centered around Quebec City, and not so much even Montreal, right?
You're right. Absolutely. That's what my statistics reveal.
So when you're saying bilingualism, all of this hoopla about bilingualism is not really about the province of Quebec. Is it about the city of Quebec? Is it about Quebec City or Quebec as a province?
We've been run by Quebec Incorporated for the last 3-4 decades. If you look at the leaders of Canada, Trudeau, Mulroney, Chrétien, Martin, and Dion, all of them were from Quebec, and we've been run by these people with that in mind. So Harper's the first non-Quebec prime minister we've had, so it's a little bit different of a scenario. He's not going to put Quebec first. He's not going to, keep...
But it seems to me it's more about Quebec City than Montreal, though.
Yeah, but that's a bastion of French-speaking citizens. Like that's their little piece of. Do you mind if I read something from this book, The Northern Mangus, Frog in the Throat? It'll kind of explain. Okay, cool. Part of the problem was that bilingualism in the end had to mean, well, 2 equal languages. Being a little bit more bilingual, being as impossible to achieve as being a little bit pregnant. On the day after the Official Languages Act was passed, the Calgary Herald came right to the point. Quote, "For the more rewarding jobs, bilingualism is being made a practical necessity," end quote. Initially, these, quote, rewarding jobs meant that just the top ones at Ottawa. Inevitably, though, it would soon mean all the middle-ranked jobs that fed the top, then jobs in the para-government, all the way from the Canadian Manufacturers Association to the Canadian Labour Congress, and down the line to jobs of all companies which had dealings with francophones, and to some provincial government positions. Eventually, unilingualism would mean a life sentence to job immobility. Trudeau knew this all along. He fibbed about it as a necessary means to an end. As late as April 1977, for instance, he said in Winnipeg that bilingualism did not mean, quote, that a lot more Canadians will have to be bilingual, or even, quote, most civil servants, end quote. Indeed, this policy, quote, will make it possible for the vast majority of Canadians not to have to speak a second language, end quote. White lies like these are the acceptable tools of every politician's trade. Trudeau's difficulty was that the truth was bound to come out. Obviously, it's coming out now, thanks to Statistics Canada. Even if, well, they asked people what language you speak at home, and most people filled it out. Like over 90% of the country, I think it was 95, 96%, filled it out and sent it in. And most people are pretty honest about it. Like it's a,
Why would you lie?
I didn't. I speak both languages at home, but I just said English.
Yeah, the census data is really useful,
Oh.
Even if they were slow to comprehend what was happening, more and more English Canadians, such as myself, even though I went to a French immersion school, became aware that they had been disadvantaged and began to react, as I'm doing now.
Yes.
Some expressed their feelings through hostility, others by turning away. In 1979, Dalton Camp put it shrewdly in Points of Departure. The persistence and growing pervasiveness of bilingualism had alienated English Canadians from their federal governments, turning them inwards to more familiar, compatible, and near political jurisdictions in the provinces. The government of Canada had lost its constituency. Without a constituency, democratic governments are just a shell. Their legal authorities remain, but their moral authority vanishes. During 1976, both halves of the country rejected bilingualism. A Gallup poll that summer measured popular support for institutional bilingualism at an all-time low of 37%. Trudeau had lost his moral authority to mobilize the national will. The center was no longer holding. And I want to just make 2 more points. We're last in productivity now in the G8. We've got a higher population than Sweden and some of the other countries like Switzerland at 7.5 million, yet they outperform us in productivity. My bag was made by the Swiss Army Company. It's very well made. We don't do these kinds of things.
Okay,
my shoes were made in Germany, handmade.
Okay, that's a whole.
Shoes.
What's that got to do with
that's all.
bilingualism?
Yeah, I mean that's a separate issue.
We're divided.
I'm happy to talk about it.
It divides us. And his other policy, multiculturalism, means celebrate the country where your parents came from instead of the Canadian one. Instead of having a Canadian identity and a shared sense of values, we're now looking across the ocean at Europe or Africa or Asia.
So does Swiss are they unilingual?
No,
they are, but they have each citizen has to be in the army for 2 years.
They have 3 languages in Switzerland.
Yeah, but they're very united. They're very democratic. They have a lot of referendums. We don't have referendums. The only referendums we have is whether or not we want to have a ripped apart country.
No, I know, but see, I think the thing is, there's Switzerland with 3, maybe 4 languages, but it's a united country.
It is.
And something is binding it together. And I think what Trudeau was trying to do is bind Canada together in the same way with two different official languages. And I think, Sean, if we lost that and we became a unilingual English country, and Quebec became a separate unilingual French country, I think we'd all be worse off. And I think part of the big problem is, do we want to be Americans? Because I think that's the fate. Is we do that, we're gonna end up having to join the U.S. and be a big unilingual English melting pot. And do we want that? Do you want that?
We should take some of America's ideas, because they're a more socially cohesive, unified country than Canada is, and they're a hell of a lot more productive than we are, and they're a lot happier than us too. Like they're more together. Like the terrorist events which occur in their country doesn't even faze them. They're very assertive and aggressive.
They just shut Boston down. They stopped a baseball game.
Yeah, but it's not going to stop the American citizen from going out, innovating the next tech company.
It'll stop when they're all living in FEMA camps.
But
that's going to be a good reality show.
And they all live in fear of this whole gun control thing.
Well, our whole culture has been predicated on kicking them in the teeth. So I'm personally sick of the anti-American sentiment and bashing our neighbors. We're supposed to love thy neighbor.
Listen, I'm not saying bashing them. I just don't want to be an American. Sorry, go ahead,
so
Johnny
what does it mean to be a Canadian then?
Well, listen, I'm with you on it.
You just came up with the word, though, predicated, right? So when I look at the history of the country and I realize the French were here and then the British came after, isn't it dictated for us to be bilingual if that's the true history of our country?
Wolfe defeated Montcalm in about 1658, so that should have been the end of the French narrative in this country. We allowed the Quiet Revolution to socially engineer.
Why does it have to be the end, though? Are we having a?
We're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on the French language.
Is it a unified consensus, like get the French out? Like, I mean,
not get them out. Let's just stop teaching kids French language as a second language. There's no evidence it's working. People aren't. Like, we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year, and
I agree with that.
Retention.
There's no evidence that it's working.
But that's what I'm getting.
Well, then we need to try harder.
That's where I'm getting. I'm going to break my question down into two parts for you, or just my comment, actually.
Okay, I'd like to read, if possible, Chapter 18 from Stephen Harper and the Future of Canada by William Johnson.
Right.
Do you guys mind if I read a little bit about what he's trying to mention, he's trying to get at?
Would you want him to did you want to comment first?
You can comment, yeah, do you mind?
No, go ahead.
Okay, cool. The distinctive political values and policies that brought most, quote, reform conservatives into the political process are advanced with less and less earnestness. The result, Harper said, was that the Liberals were getting a free ride with their pervasive policies of, quote, state corporatism, devaluing the Canadian dollar, preventing the provinces from experimenting in the delivery of health care, which is illegal in this country, to trying to counter Quebec's separatism by buying loyalty. These policies led to an inefficient economy, political corruption and cronyism, a limping health care system. Remember the last time I came on a show, I said the Western Toronto Hospital was built in 1983 to handle 40,000 patients.
Oh, yeah.
And today 75,000 patients a year pour into that hospital with a 5 to 8% growth rate. That's going to increase 50%. Like, they can't deal with it. We don't allow the purchase of private health care.
That's why we have to throw people into FEMA camps.
So you're supporting private health care.
And some element of it. Like, we need it to take relief off the overstressed public health care, because we can't sustain it. It's just not sustainable.
Well, public health care, the way it's running, is unsustainable.
And Quebec chronically depended on subsidies from the rest of Canada, $4 to $8 billion a year, by the way, which is a hell of a lot of money. And what did the opposition parties offer by contrast? More of the same. They called conservative parties, the so-called conservative parties, need to figure out, and quickly, where they fit in this world. It frankly matters less whether they are 1, 2, or 3 such parties than whether one of them articulates an alternative vision. And in the machinations between the various camps, no alternative vision to the Liberals is being advanced. Without the articulation of a serious alternative vision, the Liberal Party is where a number of their followers will soon begin to go away. And it will not matter whether or not the Liberal one-party state is desirable. People will cross any bridge they find. And the Liberals got destroyed in the last election with only 35 seats, down from 120 in the last 4 elections. So this proves that actually happened, because this book was written 6-7 years ago, and that's what happened last 2 years. So this is, this predicted what would happen. That's why it's such a great book. It was a master class in political analysis, probably not the plumber's usual convention fare. The speech was exerted in several newspapers, and it added to the speculation about his return to politics to replace Day, Stockwell Day, of course. A month earlier, Harper had sent a message to the old reformers through a Calgary Sun column that attacked federal official languages policy as a state religion, with criticism treated as hearsay. His provocative heading, quote, Official bilingualism, the god that failed, end quote. He attacked the policy on 2 grounds. It was untrue to the real country, and Quebec rendered it inequitable by repressing English. Real bilingualism in Canada is quite geographically isolated. And if you look at, what is it? It's 2 provinces are bilingual in this country. A little bit Ontario. 2.2% of our province speaks French as a first language. Quebec, obviously, which is about 79%. And there's one more province,
New Brunswick.
27.94, 209,000 out of the 751,000 people in New Brunswick speak French. Those are the only 3 provinces where it's above 2%. Every other province, it's less than...
But there are entire towns in Alberta even that are francophone towns.
Let's look at Alberta.
I know, but there are towns that are francophone
So there's
towns.
There's 24,000 people that speak
And
French.
there's disparity.
There's 24,000 people
contrast.
that speak French in Alberta, or 0.68% of the population. It's not even 1%. And bilingual people in Alberta is 0.14%.
But 100%
under
speak
5,000
oil.
people.
But
So that's not true either, Hugh.
right. But what I'm saying is this: getting back to before you read the quotes from the book, is that you ever heard the saying, "Don't shoot the messenger"? Right? Are you the messenger of the stats here, or are you trying to say that you want to convey this to the Canadian public that bilingualism is dead, it shouldn't exist in the country, or are you just giving us the facts of the percentages of where the language is spoken?
I'm trying to show that it is dead, because the newspapers said things like bilingualism stall, census data. They're like beating around the bush with politically correct lingo. It's not.
You know what? Okay, could I just make a little point here? I don't know if
Sure.
you guys read that book, Two Solitudes, in high school.
I've heard of it. I've heard of the name of it.
It's a book, I forget who wrote it.
Did
but
Trudeau write it?
No, it's a novel, okay? And I forget who wrote it, but it's an English Canadian wrote it. But basically, it's about how the fact that we have 2 languages in this country. The country is based on 2 languages. But when you get right down to it, the book is saying the same thing you're saying, Sean, in essence, that despite our best efforts to try to create a country with 2 languages, 2 founding languages, you have a French-speaking world over here, and you have an English-speaking world over here.
Absolutely.
And the amount of intercourse, I mean that in the broad sense, Sandra.
Interaction?
If you were asking, the amount of actual intercourse between the 2 cultures and languages is tragically small.
Yeah, in Quebec and New Brunswick, and a little bit in Ontario.
So then is it worth spending all that money?
Yeah, billions of dollars.
On everything that's half French, like even Donna's book, it's half French, half English or something. I don't know, maybe not, but whatever.
So
see that.
Let me finish. Real bilingualism in Canada is quite geographically isolated. Most francophones actually live in French unilingual regions of Canada, mainly in Quebec, and most anglophones live in English unilingual regions outside the province. Areas with significant numbers of both linguistic groups are almost all narrowly concentrated near the New Brunswick, Quebec, and Quebec-Ontario borders, where most generally bilingual Canadians also reside. So I showed you guys statistically that that's true.
Okay, but if we're majorly English and hardly bilingual at all, why is it every single time I go to a store and I'm looking at the shelf of the products, every single thing has the French side on? It's like 5 different rows and it's all French.
It's because you've got bad karma.
Because, Sandra, there's 2.2% of the population that speak French as a first language, and we've been run by French leaders for 30 years.
Don't worry.
They've
They're
had
all showing like the cans and the boxes, everything is the French side
I don't like it either, and it's a waste of money for corporations to do it. But
this is what I'm saying, though. You went into this thing about manufacturing, about pride, about being unified, like the melting pot that they have in the United States. Are you saying that bilingualism is responsible for the destruction of our manufacturing sector?
it's not responsible for it, but they focus so much. They actually protected Quebec's industries. They didn't sell off Bombardier, Alimentation Couche-Tard. There's a mass SNC Lavalin. They sold off English-speaking businesses. They allowed foreign companies to come in.
Well, I mean, all I'm saying is that there's a cultural thing in French culture to protect industries,
it's like
right?
the hell with the rest of us. They sold off all the steel firms.
But it's not. I don't think
All
the government.
companies were
It's just
sold
that
off.
our government, Sean. I'm with you on this one. Our government in Ottawa does not protect Canadian industry, period, or Canadian jobs, period. Doesn't give a damn about the average Canadian. Okay, but in Quebec, because of the political realities there, they have managed to preserve a lot of their of the big high-tech industrial
I'm
companies.
renewing my passport, and I have to mail it to Gatineau, for crying out loud. It says Gatineau on the fucking envelope. Why doesn't it say Ontario?
Sean.
Why is it in Gatineau?
We're
Why
gonna
is my
have to take that
passport
out.
in Gatineau? Like, it's just crazy.
Do you know where Gatineau is?
I think it's in Quebec.
It's just across the river.
Yeah.
It's
So-
part of the Ottawa region.
So I noticed it on the thing, and I'm like,
still says
I
Quebec,
just stared in
right?
disbelief. I'm like, 30 years of
It's on the
French
other side of the
rule.
river.
I guess I shouldn't have been shocked,
Okay.
But they've tried bilingualism in other countries.
But what I'm saying, aren't we supposed to, like, do you want to lose culture? Do you want to lose language? That's what I'm saying. Aren't we supposed to be
No, but we don't-
creators of language
No,
and
but we're not
embrace
supposed to-
our
but
culture?
we're supposed
That's
to-
where I'm lost
We're not
here.
supposed to be dominated by a minority culture either. Like, we're giving people permission to use us as a doormat. Like,
I think-
Quebec
I
has
mean,
used us as a doormat
But
for
isn't
3
that the
decades.
beautiful thing, though? Like, being a black person, my race has suffered a lot because we are a minority. Does that mean that because somebody's a minority that they don't have as much to say or input? That's where I'm lost.
No,
here,
but
Sean.
minorities should also make an effort to join mainstream society and feel like they're part of. Like, do you feel like you're Canadian?
Yeah, I
God
very
bless you
much.
for saying that. But I talked to so many. My
I
own
love
cousins.
Canada.
My own cousins tell me they're Italian, and they weren't even born there.
But
that's
just-
what Trudeau's policies have done. Is they brainwashed an entire generation of people to affiliate their identity with the home country where their parents came from instead of the Canadian country where they might have.
Right, but
After a
is-
while, you become a citizen anyway. So sooner or later, you're going to be speaking English, hopefully getting an education and making a contribution to our
But
society.
isn't that the great thing about Canada? We all have disagreements, but we all can agree that this is a great country. And if our country was founded by the French and then the English came, should not we preserve our own history? That's where I'm lost here.
We should
Because
even-
this is like when we talk about these numbers, they're numbers. They actually exist. We see the reality of this. But just because you see the reality and then you talk about minority and majority, in a democratic society, it doesn't mean the majority is always right. They could win the election, doesn't mean they're right because we decided that.
Well, we know
we're
that
gonna-
with Bush.
Okay, they've tried bilingualism. Like, this isn't the first. Canada's not the first country to actually try bilingualism.
Right.
There's been. Do you mind if I read a quote out of the Northern Mangus book?
We don't have a lot of time, Sean, so if you could read a quick quote and then
3 lines, 4
we'll wrap
lines.
this up.
Of all political, this is from chapter 13, Frog in the Throat.
Right.
That's what the chapter's called. Of all political issues, language everywhere is far and away most explosive. Basques today are prepared to kill and die for the sake of Euskera, an arcane and quite useless language. In Russia, early in 1978, to try to preserve a language that, if anything, is even more arcane, 5,000 Georgian students demonstrated in their capital, Tbilisi, to force Soviet authorities to include Georgian as an official language of the Republic. Not since 1925, when South Africa raised Africans to equal status with English, has any Western country successfully bilingualized itself. Belgium, which until Canada started, had tried harder than anyone else, has failed abysmally. Wallonia and Flanders exist as unilateral ghettos inside which by law parents may not educate their children at the public expense of the other language. The Canadian Shield is about as uncompromising a ground as anywhere exists on which to plant a bilingual flag.
Right, but
So there's evidence that other countries have tried it. Belgium will probably separate into 2 countries quite naturally.
See, I don't want Canada to separate, but I know what you're saying.
Just quickly though, I think really what the whole bilingual issue is a byproduct of the Canadian attitude, okay? And I think what the problem is that we're kind of to the point, if a minority can control so much, it's more about the Canadian attitude being a doormat.
And I'm gonna
It's not about
absolutely.
not
We are a
appreciating the
doormat.
cultures,
And
but
I'm
it's
gonna-
about being we're so and we are. I mean, nobody even knows
I'm going
that
to come
we
on the
exist
show
next to the
again,
States.
and I will show you guys the new bilingualism. I've got all the numbers for these
Oh,
major cities.
okay.
There's a higher percentage of people that speak Punjabi, Italian. We've given people the ability to impose their languages. Like the Tower of Babel. Do you guys are familiar with that story where everyone kind of wanted to get off the tower because no one spoke the same language. Everyone was on different pages. That story will be more and more true as the years pass. If Canada does not promote a Canadian identity and culture to the citizens, we're giving people weak citizenship.
Okay.
No cultural capital.
Johnny, I know you want to say things. This kind of debate that's been
Continues.
going on in this country since day one, and it's a debate that I hope we don't ever stop having.
Yeah, it's killing our sense of social solidarity. and
Sean,
unity.
thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you,
I know
Sean.
you're going to continue your work, and we're going to be back on the show. We look forward to it. Where can people get in touch with you if they want to follow up with you?
They can email me at sean@nfes.ca. Yeah.
Sean@endofees.ca. Okay. Sean, thanks for doing this today.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank
Sean.
you.
Johnny
Thank you.
Smash,
Thank
thanks
you for your
for,
passion.
You,
Thank
everything
it was
you
a
did on the
wonderful
show.
experience. Thank you so much.
Thanks
Okay.
for being
You know
my
what?
guest.
And at the end of the
Yeah,
day,
of course.
Yeah.
once we get to 5D, we're all telepathic. It doesn't matter with the language.
5D. Oh, yeah. I
I'm
can't
gonna
wait.
go home and look up Black Knight. I want to touch Black Knight.
I know you do,
How did
Johnny
they do the
Smash.
test for
it's
the age?
13,000 years
But how
old.
do they know? Did somebody actually take like a sample?
Check your research. Do a chart like that.
Google it.
But that chart there is done because of language.
Okay, we're gonna say bye. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next week here on Liquid Lunch. See you then.
What a show.
See, my days are cold without you, but I'm hurting while I'm with you. And though my heart can take no more, I keep on running back to you. Baby, I don't know why you treated me so bad. You say you love me, no one above me, and now it's all you have. And boy, you know I really love you, I can't stop crying. I don't know how I allow you to treat me this way, yet still I stay. See, my days are cold without you, but I'm hurting while I'm with you. And though my heart can take no more, I keep on running back to you. See, my days are cold without you, but I'm hurting while I'm with you. And though my heart can take no more, I keep on running back to you. Baby, I don't know why you wanna do me wrong. See, when I'm home, I'm all alone, and you